Hey everyone, so yeah, my name's Roman. I originally started as an animator. I'm a musician, so I've toured around the world putting on events and experiences, and launched Ristband a couple of years ago. And the idea behind it is to take everything that's exciting that's happening in the world of VR, world of gaming, the world of tech, and try and see if you can blend that with physical experiences, with real world experiences. So this idea of virtual worlds with real-world experiences is kind of at the core of what we do, because a lot of what you do if you're making 3D artwork is it's going to exist in a game or it's going to exist in a 2D animation. But the idea that really kind of grabbed us very early on was that everything in life, from theatre to music concerts to events like that, are starting to use game engines and starting to use 3D art. And this idea that 3D models and 3D work is moving outside of the realms of just TV and games, and it's becoming part of our everyday life. So a little bit about what we've already done. We've put on these experiences, and one of the many things we do is we put on these live mixed reality experiences that was mentioned earlier. And these involve a 10-minute session where each audience member is sitting in a mixed reality headset. The experience is completely multi-user, so everyone's connected up together. The headsets are in pass-through camera mode, so filming reality. So you're in the room, you're next to the person that you're with. You have everything that makes a physical event exciting. But at certain moments, everyone connected goes to these different virtual worlds. And the reason we found that exciting is a lot of the time when you're experiencing 3D worlds or games, you're either on your own or in a headset, or you're playing online with other people that you don't see. Whereas the thing that makes going to the cinema such an incredible experience, or theatre or concerts, is the fact that you're there, a lot like you guys sitting here together. There's a beginning and a middle and an end, and you're experiencing it. So our idea was to elevate this idea of what a 3D artist does and what a game engine can do and what you could do in Cinema 4D, for instance, and really give it the kind of just the importance it deserves, where people arrive and they watch this incredible artwork taking place. So how did I get here is probably a question a few of us are asking. My background was I originally studied animation at Chelsea College of Art, and then I moved into filmmaking, live action stuff. And then, as I mentioned before, I started putting together music videos for Universal and other labels, and eventually put together some music of my own and directed some videos there. And anyone here who has had anything to do with the music industry in the last 10 years will realize that everything exciting is happening elsewhere, and that everything amazing is happening in the world of 3D, the world of gaming. And there was this desire for us to try and see what happened when we blended these two things together. So we launched Ristband. Funnily enough, in this very city, we were given a grant by the Dutch government in 2017 to do a 3-day residency at the Institute of Contemporary Art here, the CBK, which was overwhelming in terms of how the responses that we got. It wasn't just that people came along, were people who were in the gaming space or in the VR space or in the tech space. There were people from all different backgrounds that suddenly came together, because there is something incredible about sitting in with people that you know and experiencing something. And if you add a layer of digital, a layer of collective multi-user digital, it turns into something incredible. So after that, Epic Games awarded us a mega grant, which basically was the launch pad that we had. This idea then merged into us saying, well, why can't we also have things that are happening in the real world taking place in virtual worlds? A little while after that, we did a South by Southwest event, which we won the audience award for. We now have a showcase that we do every year at South by Southwest. So anyone here who's got interesting projects to do with this idea of music and technology or gaming or 3D worlds, definitely reach out to us, because the idea is we bring together all these exciting different installations, different films, different experiences, and obviously anyone watching at home, I can see there's quite a few people watching on YouTube, send us anything on LinkedIn or reach out to us on our Instagram. It's Ristband North on Instagram. And then this year we've been taking these experiences around the world, because this idea that's so important to us is to be able to take this technology and these forms of art to people. So it's not necessarily about watching a piece of 3D art that exists in a commercial or in a movie or playing a game, that being able to go to, for instance, in Morocco, where we were about a month and a half ago, and show people who, some of them have nothing to do with anything to do with 3D worlds or gaming or any of those things. Some of them never ever done VR, let alone mixed reality experiences, that the first experience they had was of this 10-person experience, all of them together. And so that's kind of the theme, I guess, or one of the themes of this talk is all of these things feel like they're coming together. There is this idea of you used to be a specific person that you just did music, or you used to be another person that you just did 3D art. And now I think all of those, not only are those skill sets merging together, but the work that's being made seems to merge together as well. So you have musicians that also make games, or you have 3D artists that also make music. And I think that this sort of hybrid notion of how culture is expanding is something that's incredibly interesting. So going more towards some of the sort of actual behind-the-scenes stuff of how we make some of these virtual worlds, this is a quick example of one of the workflows. Obviously, there's lots of different ones. And when you're making immersive experiences, when you're making virtual reality, it's actually so important, and I'll just hit this, play with this. It's actually so important to be able to see these things up close. It's really powerful to see how a sense of scale affects the work. So in this context, using just a character so that you can see how big these things are, but especially if you're making something that will appear in VR or in an immersive world, building it in VR is a really exciting and sort of powerful way of doing it, because you're rotating things with your hands. You're able to suddenly make yourself the size of a human in that scale, or you're able to zoom out and be kind of as large as a giant. And we've been putting these experiences together both as Wristband, but also as Wristband Studios. We get commissioned to create experiences. So we did one for the Arts Council. We did another one in Glasgow for the Glasgow Disability Alliance, where people with disabilities who can't go to a concert or can't go to, whose mobility is limited, could actually experience something where they could fly, where they could do lots of different things together. So I'm going to move slightly further along on this, because the idea of it is, after you've been able to build these things and do the kind of level of details that you needed, that you can then bring it into something like UE, and you can light it, and you can start creating an atmosphere. But there's something very physical about it, that there is this idea that it was made with people's hands, that I think is a really interesting approach to it. So then the other part of what we've been discovering is this idea of using C4D Cineware with Unreal Engine. Now, it's fairly recent in terms of connectivity, but it means that by creating something in Cinema 4D, you can switch between that environment being something that was going to end up as a 2D piece of film to something that would be in a real-time game engine. And in this case, we used it for a music video. So I'm not sure how clearly you can see these, but the idea was that we could film, in the bottom right corner you can see, you film the drummer, and you're using a handheld camera, and then you put the footage into After Effects to scan the motion, and you take the camera movement data and put it into Cinema 4D. And now, thanks to these Datasmith and Cineware tools, we can then bring that into Unreal Engine and have effectively virtual production for nothing. I'm sure you can see in the bottom right corner, this is like the cheapest rehearsal room in Paris with the worst cloth imaginable behind him. And somehow it kind of comes together. I'll show you a little bit more of an example. Now, this is not even using any kind of external tools apart from that. This is in Cinema 4D. We've taken the camera movement and the camera and motion data. Those squares are just indicators that we put in the scene. Once you've done that, this scene, which is just a handheld camera, can turn into this, where the Unreal Engine scene is parallaxed and can operate as if you are on a volumetric, on a virtual production stage. So after this, we went one step further, and we started putting it into this music video style things. Let me just turn this. So this is an example of a music video that we've used making both Cinema 4D, Unreal Engine, and After Effects. I'll kill the volume so then But I think that, to zoom out a little bit on this, these tools that were at one point just only sort of industry standard things for people who could make for films, etc., are now in the hands of so many people that there are all these different kind of expressions and different things that we can do with them that I think really can lead to some exciting experiences. So here's another example of basically how when we take something in Cinema 4D, this is just quite a basic shape, being able to do anything that you can in Cinema 4D and any of the sort of tools that are available in it, and go really, really specific in terms of how we're using them, in terms of what sort of shapes and sort of deformations we use. And after being able to put that in C4D, you can quite quickly put these into Unreal Engine. You can light this, you can run it in real time. And I think that that's this idea of merging together of what used to be non-real-time tools and real-time tools. Suddenly you get incredibly powerful tool set and are able to effectively go from something that would have taken a quite long time to render, and suddenly you're able to walk around in this area and you're allowed to be able to change all the perspectives on it. So then the next touch. The other thing that we do is we put on projection mapping experiences. So again, this is this idea of what is 3D and what are the contexts in which it exists. And one of them is that people are going to experiential events, and people are going to experience visuals at concerts and in installations. So what we were able to do is run the entire experience, rebuild the room that we're going to put the event on in the real world, rebuild it using everything from CAD, illustrations, etc., and run the entire show and pre-visualize it before the show actually takes place. And it's interesting because you start to notice things that you wouldn't have done if you had just done it blindly. And being able to kind of put those things together has been incredibly exciting. We've got a few of those coming up, so definitely, if you add us on Instagram, we'll send you more. The other thing that we did, which we really found interesting, was this is a spatial audio installation that we created for South by Southwest last year. And just to repeat, this is the idea of, well, how can 3D art exist in a context where it's a concert or an experience? And in this case, this is an installation that is running based on sensors around the room. It's an ambisonic experience. There's a projector that is firing all of this 3D artwork at these objects in the center. And the audience's movement is triggering different parts of the animation. And what's interesting is it's not people looking at this as, oh, this is a piece of art. This isn't people going in there saying this is a sculpture. There were people that were actually engaging with it in a way that was really interesting to us, that there were people who were spending 20 minutes just trying to trigger different aspects of this experience. And all it really is 3D artwork being projected through plastic and holographic material. I'll leave this playing for a little bit longer. I wonder if the audio is on. You can also find all these on our YouTube channel. But it was interesting to watch people gathering around and taking pictures of it, and the fact that it wasn't a piece of work that was particularly defined. It was changing every single time. So everyone's experience of it was different, which I think is sometimes the reason that people are so drawn to gaming is because your experience of it is different to the person that's next to you. So, just moving on. This is Detachment, which is a VR experience that we was in the official selection for South by Southwest, and also in the Shanghai Film Festival. And the idea behind Detachment was to take all of the 3D world we'd been building and see how that might work in the context of a standalone VR experience. So instead of it being a collective experience, we wanted it to be something that people could download or people could jump into at home. And the idea behind it was to have a dialogue between a developer who's overworked and underpaid and a voiceover actor who's also being underpaid, as many voiceover actors sadly are. And the idea is the experience is starting to break, and the voiceover actor's losing interest. And what was interesting was when it was shown in the 3 days at South by Southwest, the number of developers that came up to me that that said, actually, this is exactly, this is partly it's hilarious, but also it's quite near the bone because it's kind of a statement about how difficult it is to be a dev at the moment and how the world is changing. The same with the voiceover actors, especially with the advent of AI-generated voiceovers, that those are people whose careers have become increasingly more difficult. And it was interesting to sort of say, well, look, this is going to be something that isn't necessarily a protest piece, but it was interesting to see other people's reactions, a little bit like I described earlier, that they are all getting their own things out of it. So this is just kind of a more in-depth view of what one of these experiences, the VR shows that we do, or mixed reality shows, are like. And if any of you are at South by Southwest this year, then definitely come down to it. So the idea is that there's an audience who are queuing up outside. It's funny, the queuing up bit is actually one thing that gets people really, really excited because it feels like they need to get into something. And it made me realize how seldom 3D art and work like that is shown in that kind of context, that people say they're queuing up and they're going to experience something. You do that with a musician, you do it with cinema, and there's a kind of a new sort of approach to it here. So what you can see is these people are traveling through these worlds, and there's something about the fact that they're all together and the fact that these onboard cameras can switch and people see each other. And so instantly you've got this kind of juxtaposition between the sort of solitary nature of what a VR experience is, and also the kind of collective feeling of being in a cinema or being at a concert. So I've got another little piece. Let me do that. So yeah, we recently, I think a week and a half ago, we came back from Mutech, which is a festival in Montreal. We did 2 weeks of a residency. And this is a kind of continuation that we were doing this in a theatre, and it was open to the public. And there were people who would never, ever have gone to anything like this, people who weren't in the VFX game or they weren't into doing these things. And we started to experiment with haptics. So, for instance, using drops of water when it was raining or using fans when there was wind in it, as a way of trying to explore how people in these experiences are already buying into the idea of this being a virtual world. But as soon as you include some of these haptics things, it's incredible how much more it sort of sells the experience. This was our 2023 event. Now for this, we actually built a game space. A lot of this we sort of prefab and designed, which meant that while the concert was happening in Texas, at a place called the Venue ATX, at the same time as these physical people going to this event, we had people who were digitally attending using a gaming platform that we'd built. And so people's actions within the real world were affecting things happening in the gaming experience, and equally people who were in the gaming experience were having their real world actions changed as well. And that again was exciting because South by Southwest it's kind of a music crowd, but it's also a tech crowd. And you got to see people who were gamers dialoguing with people who were into music, people who go to shows, and having this as a browser-based experience as well was really, really important because it basically meant that anyone around the world just with a laptop or an iPad could experience it. You didn't need a gaming PC or any kind of like complicated rig. So yeah, just kind of wrapping up in terms of what we do at Ristband is really looking at this in a kind of holistic approach, that we do these physical events that take place, but we also have digital events that take place online, and we have this hybrid interaction between people engaging with 3D art and people getting together and experiencing these things in a new way. Sometimes we have clients who come up to us and say, look, I want to do an installation and it's got to be 2 weeks. Sometimes we work with a charity like the Glasgow Disability Alliance who have something that we really believe in. And really, sometimes we just do our own projects. And we've got a couple more coming up, so definitely, if you can, reach out on Instagram. We're continuing to design things and previs things using this incredibly powerful combo of Cinema 4D and Unreal Engine. And finally, if you have any questions, then definitely reach out, add us on LinkedIn or on Instagram, or use this QR code to find out more. Thank you guys so much. Cheers.